All right, so let's say you have a team together, or at least you've figured out how you're going to proceed forward, whether you're going to hire a technical co-founder, whether you're going to use contractors to build your product, whether you're a technical co-founder and you're going to search for a CEO who can message and sell your product, right? Let's say you have, okay, here are the people. What is next? Well, there's not a perfect answer to that. You could think, okay, we need to incorporate, we need to do all these different things. And while, yes, there's some of that, you might think, oh, I need to file a patent. I don't want anyone to steal my idea, all of these things. If you don't actually have a product built or something to steal, then you really shouldn't worry about the idea. People have ideas all day, every day, but it's a very, very small percentage of people that actually do anything with those ideas and that can truly flesh them out to the detail that it takes to launch a company. So if you have an idea, the biggest thing that you want to do is start building that idea. So number one, if you're building a tech company, is start building a prototype. If you have somebody who does UX, UI design, and what that means is it's your user experience or your user interface. That's basically what your end customer is going to see. So if you go onto a website right now and see the homepage, that is the user interface, right? That's the user experience. Is what do I get when I click here? What do I see when I open that? What flow does this take me down to? That is your user experience, and that is the most important thing for you because that's what's going to make it if people like and buy your product. So that's ground zero. So you can either, same thing, hire somebody who does UX, UI design. If you had a technical co-founder that does that, great. You don't necessarily need a front-end engineer yet who can build it, but this is really important. So you can hire designers on different apps. You can, same thing, post a position. You can ask your network. Again, your local tech scene will be invaluable for things like this. There will be UX people there. There will be tech people there. There will be investors there. So get plugged in there and ask, who designed your application? Are they great? Do you love them? Are they available, right? So that's, I think, getting warm referrals from people who have done it and had a good experience is a great place to start than trying to go in blind and just interview people without knowing how they work. So if you can do it that way, do it that way. It can vary on how long it's going to take you to get a prototype together. If somebody's working on it full time, it also depends on the complexity of your website. If someone's working on it full time, it can go pretty quickly. But if somebody's working on several other projects, or you find somebody else who's doing it fractionally, while they work a job, then it's going to take time. And what you'll find with a prototype, big thing to pay attention to here. We had several different screens on our prototype ready. And so we had engineering starting to build those screens as we went in and started finishing the rest of the prototype. Big no. Don't do that. You need to finish your prototype to completion and have a freeze on it before engineering starts getting involved. And I'll tell you why. Even if you think, oh, this was the whole, parent side, that's not going to have anything to do with the provider side, it's going to be totally different. You can't really predict what might change until it's all done. So for example, you may be working on a search flow, but then as you're building out something in one of your portals, your sign up process, something like that, you could all of a sudden realize, oh shoot, I need to change this on the search page to match this here, or this is a better way to display that, which I'm just now realizing. That is going to happen with your first prototype. There's a 0% chance you're going to build every screen and not go back and touch them and make changes. So if you have engineering starting to build when you don't have a prototype yet, you could be spinning your wheels for a very long time and going back and having engineering redo things that they've already built. So be very conscious of that. So that's why they say sometimes you'll hear about code freezes, right? Where we need a code freeze by this date so we can test and improve and iterate before we launch. You also need a prototype freeze where there's a date. This is what it is. It's done to completion. I cannot touch anything else for our MVP build. So you got to freeze that, then you hand over the prototype to engineering, and it is up to engineering to figure out how to build that. So what you're showing in the user interface and that user experience is, this is what I want it to do. This is what I want for my end user. This is how I want this to flow. And then engineering has to think about, okay, how do I architect it to work that way in the best way possible? Now, one other kind of mistake and thing that I made when I was hiring engineers is a lot of engineers will claim to be full stack engineers. However, very few of them really are. So to find somebody who's a fantastic backend engineer who can do database and DevOps and all kinds of coding, it's rare to have somebody who's equally as good with the front end and design and user experience, right? So that's something you typically need a front end and a back end engineer to build something very seamlessly. Now, again, if you have a CTO, co-founder level who really has experience with both, but you need to make sure of that in the interview process. You need to say, what projects were you primarily back end? What projects were you primarily front end? What projects did you do DevOps with, right? And DevOps is basically where you host. So, we host our application on AWS, which is Amazon Web Services. And so somebody has to know that's a whole complex animal on its own. So if somebody's saying that they're a full stack engineer, can do all these things, you really need them to prove that to you. And what one did you do? Like my application personally is like 70% front end. And so I had brought on a CTO who was very back end heavy and really struggled with how to deliver things into the user interface the right way. And I didn't understand that at the time. I just understand, why does nothing work? Why is everything wrong? Why are these overly complicated, overly architected, very simple things happening? And I think that's really what the answer was, is that he wasn't front end savvy and didn't understand the best, fastest, most simple way to make something work well on your user interface. So be very cognizant of that. And if you have somebody who's strong there, right, they can help build out the prototype, but you really almost need a product mindset. You need an end user mindset. So if you're building a solution for something that you wouldn't be a user of, I would highly consider a different startup. I created a platform solving a huge problem I was experiencing that I would be a regular user of. So I know what makes me mad as a mom searching for childcare. What do I hate about these other childcare websites? What have I struggled with when interacting with childcare providers, right? Like all of those things I know and had felt over and over again. And so it really enabled me to solve for not just one pain point, but several different pain points that exist in the childcare space. If you're trying to build something that you haven't struggled with that problem and you aren't your end user, it's going to be very challenging to build that the right way. And if you're set on that, and it is the case, then you've got to bring in somebody early on who is your end user to figure out if you're missing the mark, if you're on track, or what is missing. So whether that's a focus group, whether that's a co-founder who's focused on user experience, a CPO, which would be like a chief product officer. If you bring on a chief product officer, you want to make sure they would be a user of your product, because they have to think through every little click, then what happens. And when you go to start building out a prototype, you're always going to underestimate the amount of work, the amount of screens that it's going to take. So every little click does something, right? And then every screen goes to a different screen. And then some of those all interact and display data differently. And how do you display data the right way? So the user experience, user interface, you have to have a product mindset, empathy for that end user, somebody who's very good with design and front-end engineering. There's different tools you can use to build out a prototype. We used Figma to build ours, but there's certainly other options. And you want to start building that out screen by screen, click by click, so that you truly know the end-to-end state of your application and how everything flows and connects together, displays data, the whole user journey is there before you ever start to build or fundraise or anything else. So designing and prototyping out that product is always going to be step one. Now, you can do it if you don't have a designer yet and you don't have the skills to build in like a Figma or a true prototype mockup, but you're an idea founder. Start mocking it up in PowerPoint or Canva or something else. It doesn't have to be perfectly designed. It doesn't have to be what your end users are going to see. But start thinking about what is on your homepage. And then if I'm doing this, then what happens? If I'm doing this, then what happens? What's on that screen? So it can be messy. It doesn't have to be beautiful if you're not a designer. But that's actually where I started. I had PowerPoint screens of homepage, search page, filters, the parent portal, the provider page, provider sign up. Just kind of think of it almost as a whiteboarding session that you could share with other people. So, okay, this will flow to that, will flow to that, will flow to that. Like that is what you have to flesh out first and foremost when building a tech product is what is that customer journey? What does the user experience look like? And how does that land with the end user? Okay, if I'm coming to this site, I do this, what were the pain points I was trying to solve for? Did I do that? Right? What are the gaps that the other solutions aren't meeting? Did I fill those? And so really mapping out screen by screen to the best that you possibly can is going to be your crucial starting point. You don't even have to be incorporated yet to do that. You don't have to do anything to do that, but that is the starting place. And you can get customer validation and feedback just from a prototype. That is a great way to get it early on before you go down the path of building and engineering a solution that may be missing the mark. And you will save yourself tons of time and money if you get that validation and feedback first from your prototype. Again, founder group 3, we go too fast and don't always do these checks and balances and take the time. Now, I was my own user and I had a great deal of empathy. So I also did get feedback from our prototype kind of as we were building. So, could have done it sooner, but it was a little bit different. But just take the time to do these checks and balances. Kind of like I tell my son when he's building a Lego set. He's 5 years old. He's always building Lego sets that are like 8 and up. So I'm like, okay, you gotta, every few steps, you really need to stop and check and look at it and make sure that you're not missing anything, that you didn't miss a step, that you didn't do something wrong. Because what happens if you keep building and you get to a certain point where then all of a sudden that missed step or that step that was done incorrectly completely derails the whole project. And that is so true with startups. So take the time to do those checks and balances. It doesn't have to take years, okay? This can be, okay, I'm gonna build out a rough wireframe of this, run it by a few people via email. Does this make sense? Does this hit the mark? Maybe we have a Zoom call with some other mom friends, whatever it may be, just kind of like touch point. Okay, then make any adjustments. Then when you actually get the prototype built, same thing, or even part of it built. How does this homepage land? Does this feel like a good experience? Is there anything here that would frustrate you? How does the design look and feel? So you can do those things quickly and in bite-sized pieces, but just take the time to do it because it is going to pay off so majorly in the long run.